Excellency, on behalf of the Nigerian Professionals Network, the Areas of International Affairs, and everybody gathered here, we say you're welcome, sir. And thank you for, despite a very tight schedule, coming to have this conversation with us. So at NTN, this conversation on Nigeria's national development is a pivotal part of our Nurturing Nigeria's Future initiative. Nurturing Nigeria's Future initiative is basically geared towards seeing how we can leverage the resources of Nigerians in the diaspora to support economic and social development of the country. And it's a series. This is the fourth we are having in the last 7 months. We've had in London, we've had in New York, we've had in DC, and in the next 6 months we'll be going to Switzerland. We'll also be going back to London, and we'll also be going to Dubai. So it's a series that we're having. Because for us, we believe this convening are very important, and also to see how we can begin to have like positive posturing about Nigeria abroad. And it's very important for us to engage at this level. And our focus has been subnationals. And we are very happy that you are here with us. And as Jennifer already mentioned, this is we hope this will be conversational. And we hope to really hear directly from His Excellency. And it will be nice to see how the conversation goes. So once again, welcome everyone. And at this point, I will turn it over to Emmanuel Shimon, who will bring up the program. Thank you so much, everyone.
Welcome everyone. It's such a pleasure to have this discussion. And thanks Jennifer, and especially to the Elliott School for hosting us for the second time. Right. So, and we believe it's very important for us to have this discussion around national development and sub-national development. And it's coming at a very crucial time, looking at what's happening back at home. And we have a former diaspora professional who is here to walk us through what it has been transitioning as a private sector expert and going into public service. For the last 8 years, he has done some stewardship, some good stewardship in other states, and we will hear from him how that transition happened. How has 8 years been in office? And for many of our professionals who are also curious, should I go into public service? Should I not? We'll have a good chance to hear firsthand from someone who has transitioned whether or not we should go into public service. So we're going to talk through all of that, his journey. And so without further ado, please welcome with me the Executive Governor of the Edo State, His Excellency. Just to test His Excellency's mind. That is working. How are you feeling today?
Great. It's
Fantastic.
glad I put the sunshine to this.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. It's great to have this discussion today. Do I need this mic, or it doesn't seem to be making any extra sounds? Okay, great. Okay, it was just me not being very tech savvy. And good enough, His Excellency has been really great with technology in the States. So maybe that has affected how my mic is responding. So, Your Excellency, we're going to start first with your private sector journey. So we've seen you do great in coming from investment banking and owning your own investment firm, and then 8 years in government. How did that transition happen? Your Excellency, your mic is the one on the left.
Thank you. First, let me thank Olumbide and organizers of this event for having me over, for inviting me to share experiences with you and to have a conversation on issues related to national development. I guess I'll say I'm just an actor. What's really critical should be more what we're acting out. ourselves in today, and how do we reposition the country to play the role I believe God has destined to be played on the continent and for the Black race. So I'm going to have that conversation within that context. It's not about Godwin Obaseki and great things, the claim it's done.
That's an interesting way to put it.
It's about why is it important? Why is the transition important? Why is public service important? What does it mean? I'll say personally, I am very lucky. I'm advantaged in the sense that I come from a background of home where my family has always been in public service. So I grew up in a house where there was always an emphasis on public service. And as I was saying this, in a session this morning, when I finished university and I said I didn't want to work for government, we were interviewing in the Bible for foreign service, intelligence services, I want to do business. And so why? So what's all this money craze about? Different from how I grew up. But I think the important thing is the ultimate, in my view, human existence is your ability to give back, to build for everybody. Right? So the private sector, you're taking care of yourself, your business, feeding yourself, feed your family, but somebody has to take care of all of us, right? Within those who have and those who don't have. That's why public service, in my view, is important and critical. It doesn't mean that you should be worse off because you made a choice, but sometimes it's great when you are comfortable when you go into public service. When you're not struggling with your mortgage,
Correct. We can relate.
when you are put somebody aside and it's okay, now let me go and step, because you can't make money. You're not going to be a millionaire from public service, but you should be comfortable and be able to pay your children's school fees and live a normal middle class life. Unfortunately, public service in Nigeria today doesn't quite cut it, doesn't offer you that, and that's where we should be headed. The other general comment I want to make is about this dichotomy between the private and public sector. I always argue that just one sector, the Nigerian sector, right? There's two sides of the same coin, right? One sector needs to rub off the other. One sector needs to support the other. Otherwise, you won't have the Nigerian sector, right? So it can be about public just the public sector, where through the years we had a commanding high security where government did everything, the government also did everything for all of us. And that's perhaps too narrow a view. It also can't be private me and I and how much money I have. So you ask some of my friends in the private sector today, what's your purpose? Why are you doing this? It's about like Mercedes is bigger than yours. Right? It's just that adrenaline, like, oh, I've made that extra $1 million. But whether it's private or public, it's about national development. It's about creating more value, more wealth for the country. So back to, I talked about why it's like I've been in the private sector. I went into investment banking. I was here for a long time. Went back to Nigeria and worked very closely with the IFC. Sports, go and set up sectors with the IFC correspondents. That's the point where the IFC was working on emerging markets, and its history. I mean, actually, the IFC database was quite big and sold to the Western market and the world financial system has taken a new turn since then. Emerging markets category is now quite a substantial portion of the total market. So in 1994, I decided to go back home to set up trust. And interesting times. And 20 years after that, I said, look, I think I've accomplished all I set out to do. Let me now go back to my father said, your life will not, you will not have completed the cycle if you don't go back and give back and serve. Because that's what you remembered for. It's about legacy. The easiest way to do legacy is to go and serve your people.
Okay. So was there any specific moment where you just came to this realization? I think I need to make this separation from thinking about me to something broader. Was there an incident? Was there a specific problem that you saw that you said, I just need to be a part of solving this?
It was a crash of 2008. And it just occurred to me, wait a minute, you could spend a whole lifetime trying to build things, build wealth, right? And just one stroke of policy. And that's it. And you sit back and say, okay, why can't I be part of one of the, why can't I be part of fixing policy? Why must I always, why must I always wait to respond to policy? And sometimes you could find out that you could even add much more to creating policy that's going to help a lot more people. People doing so. So the market crash of 2008, for me was a turning point where I then realized that okay, accomplished what I set out to do, built a firm, it's there, yes. It suffered a bit of, like everybody suffered a bit. But in every market turn, you build back. Yeah. But I was just not interested in it anymore. I said, okay, what next? You build a firm, you put in capital. So the market now is going to go back up for some time. And then what? So at that point in time, I said, no, go into government and see how you can help in policy formulation.
Okay. So my next question will be around, did you have a specific transition strategy? So, because for many people, there's the thought, there's the intent, there's the interest. I've identified the problem, but how do I get in, especially if my parents weren't particularly in public service, or I don't have enough financial support? So, what would be your stare to people who are interested, but they don't have the means or wherewithal or the network to get?
I think for me, it wasn't, it was a thought. I was looking to do something different.
Okay.
And I also knew that it would be in the public space. It wasn't a specific plan to go into governance. Just an opportunity emerged where, because of my interests, I decided to support a candidate. Okay. And then, beyond supporting the candidate financially through elections, I decided to support the candidate from a policy standpoint. So let's think about how would you run government? What are the priorities? What do we need to do? And put together groups, friends with resources, and put out a blueprint, a master plan for the candidate at that point in time. And prevailed with me to assist, and I said, okay, I will serve on an advisory capacity. So I did that for 8 years pro bono.
Interesting. Pro bono, 8 years.
I wasn't doing it for the money.
Okay.
This started as full time. I was spending a few days a week. Then after a while, just because the system lacked capacity, so I just found myself doing quite a lot of things for them. And then so why not? You understand what the issues are. You understand what the problems are. Why not step in?
Okay.
Pray and see. Rather than advice, you do it yourself. So I wouldn't say it was deliberate. I think it's process with politics in mind, with government in mind.
Yeah.
Because I went in from, he was trying to assist, trying to fix policy, trying to understand policy, and just found out I had more responsibility.
Okay, so here you are, you've done 8 years of that. A little reflection. What would be like your proudest moments to say, if you were going to look at all of the reforms you've put together, the projects that you've brought on board, you've worked on human capital development, you've put out the EduCity to support, young people, which is like the one thing you will say, this is my legacy as I'm, stepping a little bit away from active government as it were in Edo State.
Okay. Before I answer that question, let's say we'll talk about what happened.
All right.
What did Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about what happened. So, okay, I'm going to run for the office of government. How am I going to do? What are we going to do differently?
Okay.
And to answer that question, what are the real challenges? And there were numerous. For me, I got into office in 2016 at the height of a depression, economic recession. But beyond that, we also had a crisis in the state. A human capacity, I would say human capacity, a human crisis. Edo at that time became known for human trafficking and irregular migration. We were number one on the continent.
Okay.
The situation was that bad that in February 2017, I got a report from the International Office on Migration that there were over 30,000 young Edo boys and girls in India trying to cross into. So can you imagine how many would have died? And I mean, that was a humanitarian crisis. And I said, why my people? What had gone wrong? Why were young people just opting to leave home at any cost, with all that risk? And I think that lays the basis for all the reforms that subsequently took. So of course there was a problem to solve. Home wasn't home anymore. People felt the only way to get a good life was to go somewhere else. So the challenge for us was how many things what do you need to do? And that was how we defined issues and then put in place policies and programs that you've seen over the last 8 years. And how did we approach our reforms? So let's look at it from 6 perspectives. First is the human angle. How do you build back confidence in people? How do you build a human capacity, people to be able to do things for themselves and not have to leave home? Key to those are health, education, and health. So that led us to everything else we did with education and subsequently health. And the way we looked at education was to not to focus on the end, producing the graduates, the tertiary institutions. Focused on the foundation. How once you fix the foundation, then you fix the entire system. So our emphasis was on foundational learning, fixing the basic school system. And that's a long story of how we did what we did. But to say that today, after 8 years, Edo has perhaps one of the most spoken about educational reforms on the continent. just schooling, they are learning. And they are learning almost at par with their age grade anywhere else in the world. On the other side is healthcare. We approach healthcare from the same perspective. And thank God for COVID.
Really? It's the first time I'm hearing someone thank God.
Because if we hadn't had COVID,
Okay.
I would not have understood the depth of the crisis in the healthcare system. Where my health managers could not give me reports on the number of deaths, for instance. You know, there was no data, and there was, you know, we had just carried on as if we had a healthcare system. But COVID showed that it was practically non-existent. So that meant for us, you know, a wake-up call to rebuild the healthcare system. And today, what we've done, like we've done with education, is to just rethink healthcare. Say, look, healthcare is not hospitals. Healthcare is a system made of a bit of both regulation and providers. And rather than continue to pretend and, you know, that government was in charge of the healthcare system, we have to deal with the reality that you have more private providers of healthcare than government. And therefore, how do you regulate the entire system to offer service to everybody? And that just like with education, what's important is the quality of care, the quality of services rendered. And that's what government has to focus on. Has to do it first by ensuring regulation, but more importantly, the finance. Because healthcare is very expensive, as you know well, in America. So today, yeah, we've, you know, at Rethink, government now focuses on basic care. You know, having the hub and spoke model where government emphasizes primary healthcare clinics across communities and neighborhoods, right? And we've introduced technology to understand and know what's going on in each of these clinics, and you know, the kind of ailments that's prevalent, and you know how they've been dealt with. But one thing that ties it all together is the ability to pay. So whether you are going to my primary healthcare center in Oregon or one in Akenagobe, you get about the same quality of service, and you're able to, I mean, because you have insurance, you're able to pay. So we have one of Nigeria's biggest subnational health insurance plan with over 350,000 employees.
That would be a good place to start.
And you know, once you have money, everything becomes possible.
And you're the finance man. So that makes sense.
Okay, so we focused on the first plan was things that have to do with our citizens, human capacity, health, education. The next thing we talked about was how do you organize government? Government, if you see government as a vehicle that's carrying the citizens, they now sit back and say, what's the nature, what's the state of the engine of that vehicle? And the engine of government is the civil and public service. They are the ones that make policies that affect citizens. They are the ones that determine, you know, how economic activities are undertaken in the state and how much revenues come in and all of that. So we have to focus on the civil service. And when we got in, so we're in the civil service state, you know, the big driver of the economy is the civil service. Meanwhile, the civil service was stauntering. So what we talked about the last 8 years is to rethink the civil service. We actually invested massively in our civil and public services through a whole process of retraining, reorientation, but more importantly, the introduction of technology to make government processes more efficient and, provide better services to our citizens. Yes, we had to refurbish and build the infrastructure, and just to reinstate that sense of pride and dignity in civil servants. That today we boast of perhaps the best office infrastructure on the continent as opposed to national.
Public servants?
For public servants.
Okay.
I mean, you go to our secretariat, we have 24/7 electricity, power, because we have an IPP. We are one of the few subnationals on the continent that run a paperless government.
That's big. Paperless.
Paperless. So our civil servants are trained, we have a public service academy, we now hire strictly on merit, and we brought in a lot of young people into government.
Okay.
A lot of young people. When I got in, the average age in our public and civil service was about 48 years. Today, we've reduced that average to about 35.
That's amazing. And we have about that age in the room who was interested then.
Then, we had to ask ourselves, so what's all of this about? It's about the fourth pillar had to do with the economy. And that's where the public service and the private sector. Training people, we're making them healthier. We have the public service that works. What is the purpose? So you want to create an environment.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We decided to create an environment that's inviting, that will attract investments into the state. But think about it. Now that you have civil servants who are willing to be supportive and not obstacles, right? And I didn't see everything when we talk about rebuilding institutions. We undertook land reforms. So one of the first things we did was a flyover, an aerial flyover, established a GIS, and undertook a massive land reforms. So today in Edo, we were asked, before I came into office, the total number of certificates of occupancy that had been issued by the government before I came in was under 5,000. In 3 years, I've issued over 30,000 singles. Because it's almost digital. So with land reforms, people now have certificates of occupancy, they have some, they have collaterals, they go to banks, they go raise money and do their small businesses. We focus on security.
Okay.
And from a situation where Edo was almost a no-go area to now where Edo became one of the safest states in southern Nigeria.
The state police.
What we did was ahead of state policing, we focused on community policing. Yes, going into communities, encouraging communities to set up vigilantes or guard groups. We register them, we train them, and give them communication devices and a backup support. We set up a command and control center, installed cameras around the region, entry points and exit points in and out of the state, and had a response system. So we have emergency lines where if there were incidents, people could report. So security. And the reason I'm going through this is that having fixed security, having fixed the issue of human capacity, we became attractive to businesses. So from one flight into within a day, today you have almost 10 flights coming in.
So interesting.
And people just kept investing in hotels, and because we had created the environment, people felt safety, of efficiency in the delivery of services, people came in and did business. And what sort of businesses were they doing? What sort of businesses were we encouraging them into? businesses that relied on our natural advantages. Agriculture, technology, because Edo is a hub. Services, Edo is a hub because of the hub. It's a hub of the transport network in the country. It's a hub for the gas network. It's a hub for electricity. The other thing we did was to encourage investments, government-supported investments. We invested in, before I became governor, we had invested in the Azura IPP, 450 megawatts plant. I think the World Bank had bigger than that. And then with the learnings from that, because that plant was emptying out all its electricity into the grid, we then invested at the state level with a smaller plant, 50, 60 megawatts, where we gave it a PPA that now supplied the state's facilities electricity. So government house, the secretariat, street lights, all run off the gas plant. Okay, so let me just pause here and say we did several things. First, ensure that we focused on human capacity. Second, we focused on reinventing government, making government stronger and more efficient, doing all the things we need to do with the civil service, security, land reforms, and then began to open up space for businesses and other economic activities, particularly in the areas where we had competitive and comparative advantage. Two other things we did quickly, let me just mention. First, the environment. We had suffered quite a lot of environmental degradation, a lot of forests, deforestation. Went in, did a reform, stopped all of that, did a survey of our forests, and today we have a very massive plan of the habitat plan, so we grow the forests. We have massive erosion problems.
Okay.
Amos was a World Bank lead at TTL
Okay.
for a new map that helped with all the investments that we had sought, seek from the World Bank to help curtail or reduce some of the massive erosion problems we have in the state. And the last thing we focused on, which is unique to Edo, is culture.
Culture.
That's, everybody else, every other state focused, work on education, health, environment, infrastructure,
The usual.
and the usual. But one thing we had that was unique to us, because of the Benin Empire, the amount of work, artifacts that had been taken out, the way, the whole thing, the way we lived through the centuries, we felt
Preserving that culture was very
preserving
important.
and showing it to the world was a real competitive advantage.
Okay.
And we worked on that.
Okay. So, Your Excellency, you've outlined quite a number of things that you're very proud of. But I just want to turn back to one of the first things you mentioned, and because you mentioned a lot of young people were moving, and it's great to tie back all of these reforms and how it impacts people at home. Do you think that the number of migration has reduced with all of these things that you put together? And is there any data to support those that reduction?
The data is very, very, it's commonplace.
Okay.
Up till 2018, Edo was number one in terms of human trafficking. Go to the IOM websites and just look at the data.
Okay.
Right. Today, Edo is not one of the top 10 states from people travel.
Okay.
Because if you go to Edo today, the amount of small businesses that have taken up in the last 5 years has been astounding. But we've had set up this agency called Edo Jobs with the support of multilateral and donor agencies, where we just kept training, exposing young people to skills, to various trades, to partnerships, and just driving around the state today, our small businesses I see. I think, it's just all partners.
Okay.
So people are busy, young people are doing things in the technology space. We have the tech park I think we've had about 8 or 9 cohorts. So people at home sitting there in programming, writing programs for companies, entities across the world. We have young people in entertainment. Benin competes very favorably today in Nollywood.
All right, looking forward. You're looking forward.
Yeah, you compete very favorably in Nollywood because we have built infrastructure to support the creative industry.
So, Your Excellency, my next question will be around sustainability of all of this, because 8 years for you is wrapping out very shortly. Do you worry that some of the things that you've put together may not be sustained after you leave?
Now, when you talk about sustainability, you have to understand that there has to be ownership for you to have real sustainability. Because if it's just Obaseki's programs, then when he leaves, it's likely that all of it will leave with him. But if there are programs that people have owned and adopted and they now utilize, I believe, yes, then even if they don't get as much support as they used to get under administration, but that won't make them disappear overnight. So I'm confident, I'm optimistic that a lot of young people who have found this new business, or found the opportunities, are not just going to pack and go away, except somebody who meets the conditions so unattractive. And they're not going to go away without fights. Sure. Because you don't expect them to now begin to take those risks of selling up and traveling out. What I've come to realize is there's a large domestic market. Today Edo has, with migration coming in, it's interesting. When I came in, people were moving out. Today, people are moving in, right? Particularly from the middle belt and north. And with 5.6 million people, that's a sizable market. And people are demanding goods, they're demanding services, they're demanding food, right? And as long as you can continue to organize that market, there will be growth. However you describe it. It might not be as rapid, but I don't see just this way.
All right. So very shortly, I'm going to turn it over to the room for questions. But before I get there, I know that's the interest of, should I get into public service, should I not? If you had the opportunity to just give a direction, what would be your say to folks who are interested in getting into public service? What would you say? Go in, don't go in?
If you look at all over the world, in Asia, places like India, in Latin America, it's the diaspora, particularly American diaspora, that's gone back home to make fundamental changes. Look at places like China. And it depends on your calling and where the opportunity is, where you see the opportunity. So for me, you shouldn't be worse off going back. Okay. You shouldn't be worse off whether you're going into public or the private sector. As long as you find yourself contributing and adding value, and that value is appropriately compensated for or rewarded.
Okay. So we've looked at Edo State. Nigeria is what connects all of us. And we sometimes get concerned at how the state of things are on the national level. What's your thought of how we're doing? And is there anything we could be doing differently?
Yes, clearly there are several things we should and have to do differently. Just like the case of Edo. Edo is like a microcosm of Nigeria. Has its challenges, but huge opportunities. we need to continue to address our minds to is how do you create a system where these opportunities can be realized? What has happened, what I noticed, there's just too much blame trading. We are all lamenting. Everybody's complaining. I mean, who's going to fix it? What are the issues? You have a huge market. We don't have adequate infrastructure. Yes, if we could harness, the power of government, we could, quickly ramp up and build infrastructure we need. There are many countries in the world that we would say the whole circumstances are not too different from us.
Yeah.
But those who have made that leap, made that change, we found a group of people who said, you know what, let's get rid of this patriotic shit. Let's go back and join hands. If we have to fight, let's fight. But let's make this thing better for us. In Nigeria, we just lament, everybody complains, talks, and then we disappear. And just, okay, let me look for my own small win.
They say talk is cheap.
And then and not realizing that when you come back to the problem, it's even going to be worse.
That's right.
And also this whole concept of building a nation. For so long we've tried to run away from that fact. So it's not working, okay, I'll just do my thing. But at the end of the day, they're still holding that green basket. And the challenges of that country inhibits you everywhere else you go. Okay, for sometimes you say, okay, no, I'll do my thing, I'll come here, I'll live here, I'll start my life here. And then one day, kids will say, where are we really from?
Yeah.
I want to go back. So I think it's a country we cannot run away from.
Yes.
So the attitude today should be that now we will know we cannot run away from it. How do we face it?
Okay. So I see that the questions are already coming. Thank you very much. My name is Anita Okemini, and I am a senior private sector specialist at the bank and also a task team lead for Europe and Central Asia. So first a comment. I think it's extremely impressive what you've done. I was not aware of any of these things. So I think a comment first is just ensuring that it's documented, especially because you did the hard things. I think most people, when they're trying to create change, they look at the low-hanging fruits. Nobody deals with the foundational issues. So civil service, for example, is a foundational issue. Land reforms, foundational issues. So I think it's important that those are documented if that's not already been done. And then I have two questions, one about Edo State and one about a personal question. So I was one of the co-authors of the first country private sector diagnostic, and we came to Edo State. You unfortunately were not around, but I think your deputy was around. And this was about 6 years ago, and I remember then the budget of the state and the GDP was highly dependent on remittances, right? And now that you've kind of pushed for this transition away from remittances, have we seen any, not away from remittances, I shouldn't say that because the remittances were coming from the things that you mentioned. So away from those things, have we seen any shift? And if remittances is still the major source of income, how are we kind of transitioning it away from consumption towards investment in the States? Because I feel like that was the gap when we looked at it then. And then the personal question is then, I think most of us want to come back and give back to the country. But I think the important thing is, at what stage do you go back, right? Or at what level do you go back? So for some of us, it's like, okay, let's wait until we're ready to be ministers. For some of us, it's like, okay, I want to be a governor as opposed to going at this particular level. I don't know why everybody's laughing. It's a fact. It's a fact. But then, of course, you also recognize that local government is extremely important and nobody is going at that level. So what would be your advice in terms of level of entrance? Thank you.
Okay.
Your Excellency, let's just take one more.
Let me take one at a time.
One
One at a time.
Please.
I'll share my personal experience with you. At what point did I go back? At a point where I saw a window. It was during Abacha. And that's not the one time nobody wanted to go back. But I realized that it couldn't get worse. I mean, thinking back, yes, it did get worse. But that created an opportunity, and so because people were running away, and I went back. I was able to, get a license, set up a brokerage firm, and there were not too many people to work with, so I was able to, build on the relationships I had developed here with the IFC and a few other partners. There will always be an opportunity in anything, no matter how bad it is. So you've got to understand that you're going at that point when opportunities have been de-risked somewhat, right? You don't go in where you're still carrying a lot of risks. Otherwise, you'll find yourself running back. So if being a senior political appointee helps you reduce that risk, or getting a franchise from here that's going to create a huge opportunity for you locally. It's looking at what that point of coming where I think I can manage the risks of that. The second, to answer your question, the first question, yes, let's be honest about it. Remittances are big, right? Big. But because of the environment that was not encouraging business, a lot of the remittances went into consumption. But once we came and began to turn things around, where you could go in, acquire land, build without somebody sending you photographs of something that didn't exist, or without people coming to harass and intimidate you, we found out that those remittances began to form the basis for fresh capital formation. So whether it's in real estate, small businesses, going to the city today, and there are more petrol stations, there are more investments I see people making. I wonder, all this capital is not coming from the banks. So the stability of government policy, the creating enabling business environment, made sure that those remittances moved from just pure consumption to investments.
Any other questions coming? Okay. The ladies are interested in questions today.
I'm going to be V and so I am a medical doctor and I'm originally from South Africa. My ties to Nigeria really go back as far as my dad. He was one of the people that was exiled in Nigeria. So growing up, my siblings, my mother, we spent a lot of time commuting between Nigeria, South Africa to go see my dad and all that. And so from a very early age, I was very exposed to the dynamics of Nigeria, particularly health-related issues. So I'm very glad that you mentioned the issue of health sector. And I'm glad that you also raised the point that, in terms of access of people who want to assist, who want to help. So growing up around the dynamics and seeing the issues that were going on, the shortage, the need for proper healthcare, I then, first of all, that informed my choice to go into medicine, and secondly, that's just continued to foster my my passion to help, to assist where I can in Nigeria. I'm in private practice, so for the past 4 or 5 years, I'd say I've been trying. And it's not just myself, I've got partners that I work with in Nigeria who are also medical doctors in different specialties. We've been attempting to build something that something looks like a hospital, right? And we want to make it accessible to the average Nigerian person who doesn't have medical aid or insurance. And it's been a struggle. So the issue of access has come up, and I'm glad she brought that up because it's a big struggle for us. So I'd like to know from your end, what do you think would be the best ways that we could be supported, and not just myself. I think anybody else who's doing anything like that in Nigeria. Thank you.
Okay, the way we've looked at it, we've looked at it in Nigeria, is first, look at healthcare like a business, right? There's a market. And right now, the cost of entry is quite high. What can and should be the role of government in reducing that cost of entry or de-risking? Why must you invest in the entire spectrum? I go into business first, the doctor gets the land, gets the approval, builds the hospital, and begin to source for human personnel, the human capacity, hire everybody. By the time you finish, you're now a marketing team looking for the patients. You just get exhausted, right? Yes, we found a few institutions, investors who have come up to invest in the infrastructure or build the hospitals and say, okay, doctors, come with your specialization, come and locate in our hospitals. We'll use our billing systems, use our marketing. It will send referral patients to you like it's done everywhere else, and they'll pay. I think for us in Edo, that's the model. Say, look, let's focus on the neighborhood clinics. That's your first port of call, and that's people don't go to hospitals or clinics because they can't pay, or they feel they can't afford to pay. So they'll manage the pain until it gets out of hand. Whereas if they're going for early screening or early contact, they would have found this disease and dealt with them. So the first thing we're trying to do as government is just give people that rest of mind. That look, by just paying 50 naira a day or 1,000 naira, 2,000 naira a month, you get cover. It's not a lot, and it just gives you access to, because access is key. So you don't get people oh man. So when the nurse doesn't see Mama, you say, Mama, come. How are you today? Let me just test your blood pressure and see how it is and all of that stuff. You get so access, getting people to have touch points with the healthcare system is important. So that way you have a large number of people within the radar, not just those who are sick. Because what we're doing now is you're setting up and you're just catching those who are sick and sometimes almost in a terminal state. But if we had that system in place where it won't cost you don't have to pay for card every time you go. You say, okay, I paid, but I'm not even use it. Let me even just go and see what's going on there. Then you'll be able to, like I said, add more people into the net. And so your hospitals, the kind of hospitals you're setting up, will become referral centers, referral hospitals. Today you have these big hospitals, big clinics, everybody goes there. You have malaria, AIDS, you want to go. Whereas that's not the case here. You go to your GP and they examine you. It's when you have specialized tests and things to do, they'll then send you to hospitals. And that's when, the cost is high and thank God you have health insurance, you can still afford to pay. So it's rethinking the entire system and saying, okay, who regulates what that we should be focusing on? Not a big thing about building big hospitals and bringing in fantastic equipment that you don't have electricity to run, right? So it's about just doing the simple things and doing them well. Data is key. Technology is key. In our primary healthcare centers today, because we've laid fiber optic cables, so I have about 2,500 kilometers of fiber cables, you can consult that auntie or that patient in their primary healthcare centers in their village because the connectivity is strong.
So, Your Excellency, I think the bigger question is, as an interested diaspora person who wants to support, is there an entry spot in the States, where if I didn't know anybody, I don't know His Excellency, is there one spot to go? But before you address that, I would take the next question from our lady in yellow.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for this conversation. First of all, I actually want to thank you. As a person, as a Nigerian my name is Bolande, I'm a communication strategist. I work with the IFC. In fact, I work with the MD on the IFC's podcast, which focuses on the creative industries and their impact on developing nations. And so I'm thanking you for the work that you've done with the Museum of West African Art. The investment that you've made, the political investment, political capital that you've used, the relationships that you've leveraged to raise funding to ensure that our cultural heritage is returned to us and that we're able to leverage it for lots of different purposes, including our own inspiration and asserting our place in the world is really important. I'm so grateful for the showing that we made at the Venice Biennial. Not only did we represent, at the beginning of your comments, you said that there's a role that Nigeria has to play in not on the Black race around the world. And I felt that our showing at Venice was an example, it was a reflection of the power that we have as a creative people. And so I was very grateful for that. So that's one. And in fact, the MD of the IFC has invited Philip Ihianacho on the podcast to talk about the museum. So thank you. 10 years ago, I moved to Nigeria to work with Tony Elumelu. And so I was able to, from a very privileged lens, take a look at what was happening in the nation and to document its development and the unfolding of the history of our nation. And I was very excited to, as an individual from the diaspora, go back and contribute to do my part. 6 months ago, I moved back to the United States of America, not to run, but to establish a presence in the West because I felt that it was important to have balance, to hedge. So for 10 months, I did not return to Nigeria. And so last week, I just came back on Sunday. And what did you say? Yes. So my question is this. I was very disturbed by what I saw. It feels like there's we're watching the unfolding of our country, and it feels like you said that we have to harness, if we were able to harness the power of the public sector, the power of government, and focus it on development, and good things would happen. But it seems to me that that's not what's happening. It's very encouraging to hear from someone like you, someone who is taking a holistic approach, an intellectual who is taking a holistic approach to developing a state. But I am deeply concerned that that is not happening at the national level. And so I wonder, from a person who has been at the perch that you've been at, is there hope? Are there more people like you who will take their place?
Well, thank you. Well on the right. Yes. There has to be hope. Nation building is tough. I guess the way I see Nigeria is, if you look at it through a spectrum, right? It's like different people have. I use the metaphor of Ojuelegba, the junction, right? Some people left home at 6 a.m. and they got to that traffic point and they got stuck. Some left at 10. They've come to meet the people who left at 6 at the junction. So I think we're getting to the point where everybody has now woken up from home and they are moving to the junction. Now, once we have a critical mass at the junction, if people will leave their air conditioner cars, after a while, the thing is not moving, and you come with the sweats. You go say, oh look, driver, when you wait for the driver, he come back to meet you in the car, you go there and say, what's going on? Then all of you will now start to arrange to see how you can now organize traffic to move so that you can move. Do you get it? So that's where I think we are almost getting. We have the ability.
Yeah.
We understand what it is. And nobody's going to come and do it for us.
That's right.
So let's hope.
Okay. So we're going to our gentlemen, because we've done a little bit of time, I'll just ask that we make our questions, bring them straight to the point. We'll hear from two gentlemen, and then we'll be wrapping out our session. I'll start with you first.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Henry Aviomo. I'm actually from Edo State, from Ageni.
Wow. We have to go back because your family don't know what's happening.
I know. But the one thing I wanted to ask, briefly, no one really talks about this because, as you said, like what you've done is subnational. Nigeria is a federal republic. It's beautiful federated state, and for some strange reason, we always forget this. So if you want to build Nigeria, like you said, like you built Edo State, if everybody did that, then Nigeria will be a lot better. So the one thing I want to ask, because sitting from behind, we don't really know what goes on behind the scene. We know everybody goes to Abuja to collect federal allocation. So the one thing I want to ask is, are there actually any barriers to your own state development that you did? So you took what you had from remittances from federal allocation to actually build your own state. Are there any barriers that does the federal government prevent any of that? So this is just me just trying to understand, like from the political landscape, because I don't know that. I can argue that it's a federal republic and state governments need to do better, but I don't know if there are any barriers behind the scenes. So I just want to know from you, were there any barriers from the federal aspect to prevent the state from developing? Because you did so much wonderful things. Like I said, my father goes back all the time, and and the safety has improved drastically. So I just want to hear that.
Thank you. There are no barriers in real terms, but there are barriers in the mind. Because think about it. I'll give you the example of Edo, right? So my total budgets, assuming, would be about $500 million naira, right? But the size of my economy is like 10 times that. So the more I can generate revenues to provide more supportive services, the bigger my economy grows. So from that standpoint, there's no barrier. But there are limitations within a federal arrangement. Take, for instance, issues of monetary issues, exchange rate issues. These are things that could limit my ability as a state to do much more than I could do. But yeah, there's no free world, absolute free world. You always have these barriers. It's everywhere you always have the ability to just meander through them, and that's key. So I don't think there are legislated barriers now. Just in mind.
My name is Benga Ogunjimi. I'm the director of the Nigerian Center here in DC. We are the welcoming center for Nigerians when they come to America.
How are you going to welcome me?
Yes, so I came here to welcome you myself. So to my question is about funding for grassroots civil society groups and nonprofits. Oftentimes I hear a lot of case being made for the startups and the infrastructure projects, but oftentimes we lose sight of nonprofit as the last mile they say to the citizens of the state. Do you have a strategy? Do you have a fund? Can we invest, like impact investing into such a fund and help you raise capital if you need one?
Honestly, that's one space I don't understand. You see, because typically these are advocacy groups, right? And unlike here, where there's a lot of charitable giving, people want to support the cause, we don't have too much of that in Nigeria. The other issue about this issue is usually these groups want to be independent because their credibility is usually dependent on how objective they're perceived to be. And you know, sometimes they say, he who pays the piper. So it's a chicken and egg situation. But I think a lot of the credible NGO groups have been able to seek and source funding from outside of the country. I mean, more independent funding to do what they set out to do. Locally, I'm not sure there's an impact funding. People are looking for funding
We'll take one last question. Oh my goodness. Your Excellency, do you have time for two more?
I'm here.
You are here.
I've been welcomed.
Oh, yes. Megan's done some.
I was thinking I was going to be the last person, so I can.
No, sir.
I honestly, but I'll try as much as possible to be brief.
Yes.
My name is Victory Odize. I'm from Delta State, and I came here on scholarship from Delta. Got a master's. I also got another scholarship for PhD. I have a PhD in civil and environmental engineering. Presently, I'm senior special assistant to the governor of Delta State, diaspora affairs.
Just told me. When you know you're here, I'll let you know.
So, coming to you, I know it is a lot of effort. I want to really appreciate the Nigeria professionals for these programs they're organizing, because there's a lot of loopholes in terms of connectivity, between the diaspora and others. So my question goes like this: is there a way that we can do more? I'm talking to you. I know you're a PDP governor. You have colleagues who are still back in Nigeria. Is there a way we can actually create a more sustainable connectivity from terms of people, professionals who have ideas? If it's symposiums, if it is seminars that are done in per annum or just biannual or something, to have people invited, indigents of different, from localities, from your own place, that are coming and talk about ideas that they can use to help the state in terms of generating revenue and what they can contribute. And let it be kind of a think tank whereby they can sink in these ideas and have follow-up with support from the government to kind of help, with what Nigeria indigents can contribute back to the state.
Well, I take a different view. Maybe because of my private sector experience. You don't talk about money, right? You just go and make it. What we haven't done enough is to create the opportunities at home that are properly de-risked for people in the diaspora to feel safe enough to say, I'll send my money home, rather than leave my money in the bank here and be any one or two. Let me send it home and know that I'm protected and I'm able to make more money out of it. That's what we could, set it up, all the think tanks, talk, and we've done all of those. It doesn't deliver the results. But if I say come to a door, have an open program, bring $25,000. Here's your CFO. Here's your offtake arrangement. This is a big farm, a big hose. Okay, you have a brother that we can train, that will be the manager. And this is how these other guys who are in the Costa will help supervise your investments. And you check and it's real. Will you not send the money? And then will you not come home from time to time to look at your market, your business, and to see? You will. So it's about structuring, creating that enabling environment, fostering the rule of law. And when somebody takes your money and there's a breach of contract, you can enforce it. You get it? So the relationship between the diaspora and home has to be based on tangible transactions.
Alright. Tangible transaction. The lady.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for this meeting. My name is Chineye Ifebrinachi. I'm from Abia State, but I did my undergrad in University of Benin, so I'm connected to Edo State. And I'm a data scientist. So during my 6 months fellowship with the World Bank between January and June, I had a project where we were working on decentralization in Africa. And we were trying to see how grassroots governance, like barriers to entry, is there like a bias when it comes to political party and how people participate basically. And we looked at some countries as case studies. So my work was to gather data from different countries that had available local government data, and then see like the election results and so on and so forth, and what we can basically glean from the data. When we came to Nigeria, it was hectic because, Zambia had like a central database where they had information on like election as far back as 3 cycles, where you could see like the number of people that participated, their gender, political affiliation, and so on and so forth. But what we found from Nigeria was that each state, I think, is tasked with putting up their own results. There was no central database by the federal government. So in those states, for instance, we didn't really get like a detailed report of that election, like the people that participated, maybe their political affiliation, their gender, and so on and so forth. So this is more like a database question. Are there like any policies or any things that are being put in place to kind of give that kind of visibility to such information that could potentially, because for instance, if I know that if I'm not PDP or APC, I can still contest in a local government election and there is a high win rate, that's the kind of information that kind of data can give. So is this something that has come up, and would there be plans to have this kind of visibility? Thank you.
Well, one major challenge we have at our even as a government is data. And data ties into transparency and accountability. I think there's a shift, gradual shift in how we get data. And people will not volunteer. And I'm sure, I don't know the situation in many other places. However, I think with the tools today that are available, there will be independent sources of obtaining even local data. When we're doing what's the stuff we're doing, the analytics for COVID, right? And because of the location of it, or people just because it's a junction, people move a lot around us. The bulk of the data and movements were obtained from Google. So yes, in country, there have been efforts too, but it's not been as successful as in some other countries, because for a while we just kept different people were just doing what they like, right? So the banks hold a certain set of data, the immigration holds another set of data, INEC holds a set of data, but I think there's been some more work towards the convergence of these national databases. But you also have to understand that data in itself, it's people that collect data, it's people that are relying and clean up, right? And there must be some order to it. And that's, I believe, that is being fashioned now because we now understand the value of this information. So to answer your question directly, yes, there is data. There's some national, I'm sure INEC has data about these elections, right? They do have it somewhere. I can tell you.
They give us.
Well, with like IREF, for instance, the last elections, because the data of everybody that voted, and you go see it.
Yes, Your Excellency, they hosted.
Well,
And we saw what.
I think the point is being made is that is this information available? It is. Is it organized in a way that is accessible? Maybe not. Can it be done? I believe with technology today it can be done.
Okay. All right. Your Excellency, I think that we have addressed all the questions in the room and we are at a good point to put our discussion to a close. But before we do that, I'll ask one question. What's next for you?
Well, I've never used to be unemployed. So I have to find a job.
Okay.
What's next? Speaking seriously, the next 1 year will be one of reflection and documentation to assist push the frontiers of policy and ideas. If you think about it, I have, like you said, long private sector experience. I now have, some public sector experience. I have political experience. I've been in APC, I've been in PDP. I've contested elections on both platforms. So, I think I'm a unique species.
That's a nice way to put it.
So I need to sit back, reflect, document, and advise, and see how I can support, the system, and let people learn from, or show people what I did, what I did. And I just think how ideas to make Nigeria a better place for all of us. And so, but I will not sit down and continue to lament. I'll see how I can be more proactive and more supportive of all of you. And many more who will need my help and support.
All right. We look forward to your announcement of your next job. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. It's been such a pleasure, having this conversation with you, and to our great audience. Please put your hands together for His Excellency. Thank you. I'll hand it back to the meeting.
Thank you very much. So we are wrapping up in another 2-3 minutes. But before we do that, I want to do something very unique that we hardly do at the Nigerian Professionals Network. In fact, this is the second time we are doing this since we started about 4 years ago. We don't present awards just because people give awards. We justify everything that we do. This is the first time we are giving an award to a politician in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We have never done this before. Because this is something that was well thought through and unanimously agreed that we should do. Your Excellency, we want to recognize your, number one, as one of us, former diaspora in the profession. We want to recognize your visionary leadership, transformative governance, and unwavering commitment to the development of Edo State. You took very tough calls, in spite and despite the backlash. As one of, I think it was Anita that mentioned that you did the hard things that we usually shy away from in Nigeria. Most of us work in international environments and we support other countries to help them grow. And because development is a process and the foundation has to be solid. So what you have done, you have laid a very solid foundation that we are hoping that subsequent administrations will pick up from where you stopped. On that basis, we're giving you a special recognition award by the Nigerian Professionals Network as a testament to your courage, your commitment, your visionary leadership, and more importantly, for the results that you have achieved in the last 8 years. On behalf of the Nigerian Professionals Network, I'd like to present this special recognition award presented to His Excellency Governor Godwin Obaseki, Executive Governor of Edo State, as a testament to your visionary leadership, dedication, commitment, and courage. Thank you. Can we have a certificate also? This is to validate.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Olomi. You know, like they say when you get the Oscars, I dedicate. No, thank you very much. It's indeed very, very reassuring that out here somewhere, people have taken time out and diligently watched what's going on at home. I think you're in the best position to be objective judges on how much progress or how much difference we have made in Nigeria and in Edo State in particular. Yes, there's been quite a bit of backlash politically, but you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. It's what they call politics. But I think what's important at the end of the day is to sit back and reflect and say, did we make meaningful changes? These changes that we have made, how impactful will it be to our people, our citizens, both now and particularly in the long term? For me, when I sit back and look at those 400,000 children who are learning today, the confidence in these kids, I said to myself, it will be difficult for these traffickers to come back and sell balloons to them and get them out to do whatever they want them to do. Because these children now know better. They've been better educated. And this is what it's all about. It's to ensure that, you know, for the advantages God has given us. You know, a lot of us take being in America for granted. You do. And unfortunately, we're not mindful enough. Come in or go home and expect that everything we see in America can and should be replicated at home. Not true. It took time to do this. It's a lot of pain and tears and blood. And that's, you know, it's almost impossible not to go through some pain if you want to get meaningful gain. So I want to acknowledge, you know, what you have done today and to say, don't despair. Don't be afraid because of criticisms. Sometimes that's real, the journey, most times you're uninformed. Don't let it deter you. I think just keep your eyes on the ball. Say to yourself, what's my purpose in life? What difference can I and should I make ultimately? But as Africans, as Nigerians, let us always know that we owe ourselves and the world a responsibility. We cannot continue to talk about marginalization if we do things that marginalize us. So thank you. See you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, for the picture, we'll take a picture with him. But please, before you go, we have made arrangements food for 60 people. So this food must finish. So whatever you do, this food must finish. Because we have made arrangement for 60 people. They started eating, but we still have enough. Thank you. Just a picture with His Excellency, and if he still has time to talk to people, that would be
Okay. Stop it, okay. All right. Good. Okay.
your father. Yes.
Oh, you're fine. That's how it is. Did he say? Yeah.
Okay, guys, stay tuned. We're gonna be on live video in about a few hours, so
We're gonna be doing live, so stay tuned, share this video, continue to share Mega Cover live from Washington DC.